This is the water crisis calendar nobody at the federal level reads out loud. By December of 2026, one American city is on track to declare the first formal urban water emergency in modern U.S. history. By August, Glen Canyon Dam, the structure that powers most of the Southwest, could lose 40% of its generating capacity. By 2031, the largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere is expected to cross a threshold from which no amount of money can pull it back. These dates aren't speculation. They sit inside Bureau of Reclamation 24-month studies, state engineer reports, and city utility memoranda. Every one of them is public. None of them are connected. 10 American cities, 10 dates, one calendar the country isn't ready to admit it has. We're not talking about climate change in the abstract or droughts in general. We're talking about a sequence of specific failures in specific zip codes, scheduled by the people who would know to arrive at specific times. Some of them are decades away, some are weeks. We'll count down from the surprise entry to the one that's already declared its emergency. Along the way, we'll show you the year, sometimes the month, that each city falls off the map of places water utilities consider solvable. This is the hidden calendar of the American water crisis. Every major American city water utility maintains what's called a stress test year. It's the year their models predict they can no longer reliably deliver water under projected demand and supply. The Bureau of Reclamation publishes its own version every 24-month cycle. State engineers publish theirs to satisfy compact obligations and litigation discovery. The dates exist. They're filed. What doesn't exist is the map that lays them next to each other. Each agency is responsible for one city, one basin, one compact. None of them is responsible for the cumulative picture. The cumulative picture is what we're about to show you. We start with the city that breaks the assumption that water crises only happen in the desert. Number 10. Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta receives about 50 inches of rain per year, almost 3 times what Phoenix gets. It is on this list anyway. On April 27, 2026, the Georgia Environmental Protection Division declared a statewide Level 1 drought response. That was the first formal drought declaration in Georgia since 2012, and it landed at a moment when 96% of the state was already in drought conditions. 5 million people in metro Atlanta drink from Lake Lanier, a 38,000-acre reservoir built in 1957 on the upper Chattahoochee River. The lake has a full pool elevation of 1,071 feet. In early April, it sat at 1,066. For 30 years, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida fought the so-called tri-state water wars over the river system that feeds Lake Lanier. In February 2026, Georgia and Alabama finally settled. Atlanta won. Atlanta won a lawsuit. Atlanta did not win a river. The Chattahoochee starts at a 3,400-foot peak in the Blue Ridge Mountains and drops fast. There isn't enough water at the top to keep filling Lake Lanier under the climate that's actually arriving. Rain doesn't matter if the place you put it gets smaller every year. Number 9. Denver, Colorado. Denver sits on top of the Colorado River. That's precisely the problem. About half of Denver water supply originates west of the Continental Divide, in Colorado River headwaters, and is moved through tunnels back east to the Front Range. The system is one of the most ambitious mountain water diversions ever built in the United States. It also makes Denver a defendant. In August of 2026, Lake Powell is projected to fall below 3,490 feet. That's the minimum power pool elevation. Below it, hydropower generation at Glen Canyon Dam stops. More importantly, Lake Powell is the legal mechanism that lets upper basin states like Colorado deliver water downstream to satisfy the 1922 Colorado River Compact. The compact requires the upper basin to deliver 7.5 million acre-feet to the lower basin every 10 years. The river hasn't produced that volume reliably in 20 years. The lower basin states, Arizona, Nevada, and California, are preparing for litigation. The governing framework for those cuts is the Colorado River Basin Drought Contingency Plan, known as the DCP, the official federal policy document that dictates who loses water first and how much. Denver's water security depends on diversions the lower basin has legal standing to claw back under that plan. Being upstream doesn't protect you from a downstream court order. Number 8. Tucson, Arizona. Tucson has been pumping its future out of the ground for 50 years. The ground knows. Land subsidence in the Tucson Basin has dropped portions of the city by more than 12 feet since large-scale groundwater pumping began. Sidewalks crack along subsidence lines. Building foundations settle. Underground irrigation pipes shear. The city now monitors a network of permanent ground deformation markers because the land is no longer trustworthy as a baseline. The official answer was the Central Arizona Project, the same 336-mile concrete aqueduct that feeds Phoenix. Under current Tier 1 shortage conditions, Arizona is already losing 36% of its CAP allocation. Tier 2 shortage status triggers when Lake Mead drops below 1,050 feet, which the Bureau of Reclamation projects could happen as early as 2027. Tier 3 cuts deeper still. These are not informal warnings. Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 are the official shortage classifications embedded in the Drought Contingency Plan, with automatic, legally binding cuts attached to each threshold. When Tier 2 hits, the cuts deepen. Tucson, with less stored groundwater banking and a smaller economic moat than Phoenix, absorbs the hit harder. The cracks in the sidewalks were the receipt all along. Number 7. Albuquerque, New Mexico. On April 24, 2026, Albuquerque stopped drinking from its own river. The Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority confirmed that morning that the city had processed its last surface water for the season. From that day forward, the entire metropolitan area, about 920,000 people, was running on groundwater alone. The decision came months earlier than it ever had. The Rio Grande through Albuquerque went dry for 50 days in 2024. It dried again in 2025. Researchers at the New Mexico office of the state engineer call the period from 2009 to 2025 the driest 17-year era ever recorded in the basin. John Irizarry, acting area manager for the Bureau of Reclamation's Albuquerque office, told local media that even an above-average monsoon would not offset what has already been lost. What often goes unsaid in those briefings is that the Navajo Nation and other tribal communities hold senior water rights on the Rio Grande and its tributaries, rights that predate the compacts governing every other user in this section. As the river shrinks, those unresolved claims move closer to the front of the line. Albuquerque built a $160 million surface water treatment plant in 2008 specifically to reduce its groundwater dependence. The plant cannot operate when the river runs dry, so Albuquerque pumps. The river is still there. The city just can't use it anymore. Number 6. El Paso, Texas. El Paso has been desalinating its drinking water since 2007. It still isn't enough. The K. Bailey Hutchison Desalination Plant, the largest inland desalination facility in the United States, pulls brackish groundwater from beneath the Hueco Bolson aquifer, removes the salt, and pushes potable water into the city's distribution system. It was supposed to be insurance. It has become a primary source. The Hueco Bolson is being mined faster than it can recharge. To the north and east, the Ogallala Aquifer, the massive underground reservoir that underlies 8 states from South Dakota to Texas, faces the same math at a continental scale. It has been pumped for agriculture for generations, recharged over millennia, and now is drawn down faster than any surface shortage makes the news. El Paso sits at the southern end of that depletion curve. The Rio Grande, El Paso's other major supply, runs on water delivered under the 1906 Rio Grande Convention with Mexico and the 1938 Rio Grande Compact. Both have been in court for decades. The Texas Water Development Board projects the lower Rio Grande Valley will face a 2.5 million acre-feet annual water supply deficit by 2030. El Paso sits at the top of that valley. The city is already drinking the inland equivalent of the ocean. When the ocean isn't enough, there isn't a next move. Number 5. Sacramento, California, and the Central Valley. California's state capital is sinking, not metaphorically. Land subsidence across the San Joaquin Valley, the agricultural and water supply backbone of the state, has now exceeded 28 feet in places. The cause is groundwater overdraft. When aquifers are pumped faster than they refill, the clay layers between them compact. They do not decompact. The ground does not come back. In 2022 and 2023, more than 1,000 domestic wells in California's Central Valley went dry. Families in Tulare and Madera counties trucked in drinking water for months. The California Department of Water Resources cut allocations from the State Water Project by 35% in the same window. Sacramento itself relies on the American and Sacramento rivers, plus the Bay Delta system that supplies most of Southern California, including the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, which serves 19 million people and is the largest single stakeholder pushing back against further Colorado River cuts. The Delta is collapsing. Saltwater intrusion has pushed the freshwater pumping line further upstream every year, and federal endangered species rulings restrict pumping when delta smelt are present. California's capital is being undermined, literally, by the same thirst that feeds it. You can refill an aquifer over time. You cannot unsink the ground above it. Number 4. Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City isn't running out of water. It's being poisoned by what's left. At the end of 2025, the Great Salt Lake stood at 4,191 feet above sea level, the third lowest level ever recorded. The lake is terminal. Water flows in, but nothing flows out except evaporation. Since the city was settled, the Great Salt Lake has lost 63% of its volume and 53% of its surface area. More than 800 square miles of lakebed are now exposed. That lakebed is not inert. It contains arsenic, uranium, lithium, beryllium, and antimony, heavy metals already recorded in dust storms as far away as southern Utah and Wyoming. Great Salt Lake Commissioner Brian Steed has said the lake needs 261 billion gallons, about 800,000 acre-feet, added to its volume to pull it out of what the state itself labels serious adverse effects status. One Utah Republican lawmaker called the dust risk an environmental nuclear bomb. The closest precedent is Owens Lake in California. Drained for Los Angeles, it became the largest source of PM10 dust pollution in the country, and it took 30 years and billions of dollars to partially mitigate. The Great Salt Lake is 15 times larger. Number 3. Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas drilled a tunnel 600 feet under Lake Mead because they already knew. Now they're running out of options below it. The third intake, known locally as the third straw, went operational in 2015. It was engineered to draw water from elevation 860 feet, far below the surface of Lake Mead, even at its lowest historical level. The point was to keep the city drinking, even if the lake fell to dead pool. Lake Mead, as of this spring, sits at 1,052 feet. The Bureau of Reclamation projects it could drop to 1,020 feet by July 2027, the lowest level ever recorded, lower by 20 feet. The lake is currently at 32% of capacity. Nevada is operating under Tier 1 shortage restrictions, which cut the state's annual Colorado River allocation by 7%. The Bureau is also reducing the Powell to Mead release by 1.5 million acre-feet through September 2026, which means Hoover Dam may lose up to 40% of its hydropower generation capacity as early as this fall. Number 2. Phoenix, Arizona. The third straw was the engineering of last resort. There is no fourth straw. If you've watched this channel before, you've seen our full deep dive on Phoenix. Link is in the description. We're keeping this entry short because the point isn't to repeat that video. The point is that Phoenix is the warning shot, and every city we just counted down has been quietly following the same math. Phoenix is the only major American city built deliberately in a desert that receives less than 8 inches of rain a year. It runs on snowmelt. The Salt River Project supplies about 60% of the metro's water, and the Central Arizona Project Canal moves Colorado River water 336 miles uphill from Lake Havasu. Both depend on a climate that has been getting warmer and drier for 30 years. Phoenix Water Services Director Brandy Kelso has said publicly that the city is not running out. That's true for a specific definition of running out. Arizona is projected to reach 75% of its current population in just the Phoenix metro by 2060. The math the city is selling assumes the snowpack and the river both hold. Neither one has. Number 1. Corpus Christi, Texas. Corpus Christi isn't running out of water in 2035. It's running out in December. The city's two primary reservoirs, Lake Corpus Christi and Choke Canyon, currently sit below 10% of capacity. The coastal Bend region, which Corpus Christi anchors, serves more than 500,000 residents and some of the largest oil and petrochemical operations in the country. The city is in Stage 3 drought restrictions. Without significant rainfall, Corpus Christi's government has acknowledged it may have to declare a formal water emergency as early as December 2026. That would be the first such declaration in modern American urban history. In September 2025, the Corpus Christi City Council voted to scrap a planned seawater desalination plant. The project had been in development for nearly a decade. The city had already received more than $750 million in state loans, and the projected cost had risen to $1.2 billion. A new $978 million proposal is scheduled for a council vote on June 2, 2026, 5 days from this video's publication. Ashley Ortiz works at a Corpus Christi laundromat. She has 3 boys. She told National Public Radio in April that she's begun reminding her children to never let the water run. 22% of the city's treated drinking water is currently lost to leaks in pipes whose average age is 47 years. By the time you finish watching this video, Corpus Christi will be approximately 15 minutes closer to the bottom of its reservoirs. 10 cities, 10 dates, 1 pattern. April 2026, Atlanta declares its first drought response since 2012. April 24th, 2026, Albuquerque stops drinking from the Rio Grande. August 2026, Lake Powell is projected to fall below minimum power pool at Glen Canyon Dam. Fall 2026, Hoover Dam potentially loses 40% of its generation. December 2026, Corpus Christi may declare a formal water emergency. 2031, the Great Salt Lake crosses the threshold beyond which no amount of money pulls it back. These aren't 10 separate crises. They are one crisis with 10 zip codes. If you live near any of these cities, tell us in the comments. We read them. Next week, we're going deeper on what happens after the emergency is declared, specifically how cities like Corpus Christi and Albuquerque are managing their pipe infrastructure and what a formal water emergency actually triggers at the federal level. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The dates are on the calendar. The question is, who's reading it?